Today our devotion comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, but especially on verse 2. And this is going to be the start of the theme that's going to run until I run out of favorite verses. Because this first theme, since I don't really know what you guys need, what you guys are looking for, this first theme is just going to be Pastor Josh's favorite verses. So, this is the first one that comes to mind for me. This is currently number 1 on my list. And it's, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling, and my speech and my wisdom were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in the demonstration of the Spirit and of power, that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." So, just a little background on this verse. Paul is talking, obviously, in the letter to the Corinthians. He's talking to the Corinthians. And what's really important, what's really relevant to know about the Corinthians for these specific verses is that they were known for their wisdom and for their rhetoric. Actually, in the time that he was writing, rhetorician, someone who literally just argues well for a living, was a profession, was a vocation. So they put a lot of emphasis on rhetorical speech and organizing your orations well. And he's saying here, I didn't do that. He's speaking to kind of how countercultural he is, because he's not relying on that wisdom, he's not relying on that power. And why that speaks so powerfully to me is because I think especially in this age of information, we rely a lot on, well, what can you prove to me? You have to show me that that's true. You have to show me that that is reality. And even kind of separate from that as a societal reality in the age of information, in the church we kind of have we have a lot of attachments to things that aren't always the message of Christ. We get attached to certain traditions or certain ways of doing things. And what Paul here provides a great reminder is that's not what our faith rests on. He says, I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. So all of this call for, well, you have to prove something to me. No, that's relying on the wisdom of man. That we know our faith comes from the Holy Spirit, from God. And you're not going to argue someone into that. You're not going to prove it somehow. The reality is our faith rests on the power of God and the knowledge that Christ was raised from the dead. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a thing that gives at least me a lot of relief. I hope it can give you some relief that your faith isn't up to you. Your faith is a gift from the Holy Spirit. So that's one of the things I really like about this passage is just that relief that God is the one who works His message. Especially as I do devotions like this, as I prepare to preach, it's a relief for me. So, as I close, I told you I'm going to keep these under 5 minutes. I guess my application question for you, and this is something I'd love for you to reflect on a little bit, is what's something that maybe you tend to rely on that isn't Christ and Him crucified? And I'm not necessarily trying to make you feel bad about it here. I just want you to think a little bit. Where's maybe a place in your life that you can shift to relying a little more on Christ and the hope of his crucifixion and His resurrection. So that's what I have for you today, brothers and sisters. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.